Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, your official podcast for your New Orleans Pelicans. Eichenhofer and Gus Kattengell with you here, as well as we put a wrap on our player profiles. It's hard to believe that it's been that long, but we went through 11 total players that have played at least 1,000 minutes. That was your requirement.
Exactly, and Jordan Hawkins played 1,160, so he cleared it.
Just cleared it.
You know, interesting too, by the way, on the same note, the requirements for getting a player recap have changed from season to season because we have to kind of factor in, like, you know, obviously some seasons it's different, but one of the things I looked up that I thought was interesting, so over the last 3 seasons with this, with Willie Green as head coach, Jordan Hawkins played 1,160 minutes as a rookie. Dyson Daniels played 1,042. Trey played 864. Murphy 864. Jose Alvarado 834. So Jordan Hawkins actually played more total minutes as a rookie than Dyson Daniels and Trey and Jose.
As rookies.
As rookies. Played more total minutes in that season. So I think people would be surprised by that. Herb Jones, however, did play 2,335 as a rookie. So he's definitely doubled what Jordan Hawkins played. And he was the one guy that, as a first-year pro, everybody was just like, get this guy on the court. By like the second game of his career, he was already a starter. So he was ready to go. But I thought that was an interesting little fact that you know, Jordan actually did play more than Trey Murphy and Jose Alvarado, as well as Dyson Daniels, if you look at the players that have been part of the rotation over the last few years.
We had to break it down for us and kind of take a look back in an experienced sort of way. Mr. Will Guillory, because he's a shooter too. He's a hooper. Anybody that covers this team or is he loves to just grab that basketball and be like, we're good. Let's take a few shots here as well. Did we ever have our Media League game this year, by the way?
It's been a few years since there's been one. I actually think that my theory on the media game is I think a lot of people enjoy having like a theoretical, like, hey, let's have a media game, because I would be great in it,
I would
as
love
opposed to actually having the game where, you know, some of people's flaws might be exposed in front and center. So,
you know what? I'll tell you what. Not that you don't have a lot of things, dude, but let's add that to your plate. Can we make that happen, please? I want to recap, like a profile of the teams. You know, which team you predict could be better. We could do a podcast.
Maybe
on it.
FanDuel could get involved somehow and say, this team is favored because they have this player and that player. But if I go against you, if you're on the other team, I am going to be fearful because I know you're past. You're going to come in and hack. I mean, I'm going to have to protect myself going to the rim. You're going to be very concerned that a hard foul could be coming around
at any minute,
any corner. No, you're right.
Forget a minute. Any second that's going to happen.
I actually think, too, the media game, some of the problem of getting it underway and returning it after it was only done once was insurance issues, maybe some need to have an ambulance nearby for CPR. There's a bunch of, you know, thorny problems that we kind of have to sort through, but maybe I'll spend the offseason, you know, doing some paperwork and figuring out how we can overcome some of these concerns.
Well, people don't know. A third of this building upstairs is lawyers. So, I mean, you can just walk upstairs and take care of that. Will Guillory here to break down Jordan Hawkins, the rookie season. It's time to continue our player profiles, and this is it. Jim Eichenhofer. It's a wrap. The requirement for our player profiles was you had to have played how many minutes?
1,000 minutes this
Jordan
season.
Hawkins, fans wanted you to play 3,000 minutes. Will Guillory of The Athletic covers the Heat, the NBA. Did I do that right? Is that the best way to intro the player profile of Jordan Hawkins? At least by fans.
I think 3,000 might be a little light. It might be a little light. They probably wanted a little bit more than that.
It's interesting because so they draft him. Aaron Summers and myself got to call the games in the NBA Summer League. We saw him struggle a little bit, but we saw that shot. We saw there was so much excitement for him to come in. Then the season starts, Will, and played well enough to where he played in the season's, Rising Stars game, but that probably was the best time to go see him play. What do you make of the rookie's rookie season, man?
Man, it's crazy because I think you started from the right point that, during Summer League, it was rough, man. I remember sitting there being like, wow, this is the guy that's supposed to be the top shooter in the draft. Like, he couldn't buy a bucket in Summer League. And I think the one thing I kept saying is, well, at least he's still shooting. And I think that's the one thing we learned about Jordan Hawkins. I don't care what's going on around him. He's going to shoot the basketball. That dude walks around with supreme confidence. He doesn't care if he missed his last five, if he made his last five. He's going to let it fly. And I love that about Jordan Hawkins. And I think that's going to benefit him going forward. But also, I think as he grows, he's got to learn a little bit of discretion at times just to kind of, even out his game and get rid of some of those dark patches he has.
By the way, guys, I looked up while we were talking. There's 82 games in NBA season, and there's 48 minutes in each game. A player can play as many as 3,936 minutes over the course of the season, which I think Josh Hart almost came close to doing that.
Yeah.
So if you have a few overtimes, you could actually get to 4,000, but that's another story for another day.
That is such a Jim Eichenhofer moment that you did that math that fast.
No, I had a computer. I had a calculator here on my computer.
He did it all in his head too, Gus. There wasn't no calculator or nothing.
I love that.
I should have pretended that I did do all that in my head, but no.
I could have grabbed like some music in the background.
I don't want people. I've already frightened people enough with my brain. I don't want people to even more scared at what I'm capable of.
It's Pinky and the brain. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Will, you talked about his, the way he started the season or the way he started his career in Summer League. But in the regular season, he had, by his seventh game of his career, he had a 30-something point game against Denver. Obviously, we saw some of his other huge games that he had over the course of the season. From the most positive aspect of his year or what he showed, especially during the stretches of the season where he was getting more playing time and he was on the court, made a bunch of starts even when they had a bunch of guys out. He had 10 starts over the course of the regular season. I mean, what do you think he showed in terms of what his upside is or what his potential is, going down the road?
Yeah, I think for sure Denver's a great example of, I think that's probably the best game he played all season. He was unbelievable in that game. I think back to also the Dallas, the game where the Pelicans sat everybody, where they flew in the day of the game. He scores 30, and they end up winning that game against Dallas with Luke out. I think the big thing for him is that you see a lot of guys pursuing that 40% three-point number, right? Everybody wants to be a really good three-point shooter, efficient three-point shooter. And I think he's a guy who can do that, who could be a 40% three-point shooter while also shooting a high volume of threes, which is a very short list of guys who are capable of doing that, right? The Pelicans for years have been trying to get Trey Murphy to that point, where he could be a guy who's taking 10, 12 three-pointers a game and still shooting at a high level. And I think Jordan Hawkins, we've seen, has the potential to be one of those guys who's taking 10, 12 threes a game and still making them at a 40% clip. And what makes him so special is that he's doing it, on high degree of difficulty three-pointers, running off of screens, sprinting in transition, stopping and popping. I think you've seen him be able to shoot threes from basically every angle, every position, every situation, and he still can make them at a high clip. And he can also get them off. A lot of times you look back at guys like, some of the great shooters like Kyle Korver, people talk about, he shoots him at a high level, but how many threes is he getting up during the course of a game? Like I said before, that's not a concern with Jordan Hawkins. He's going to get them up. And I think he's shown the ability to make them at a very efficient rate. So I think that's what you kind of see for him in the future, as a guy who can come in, be that microwave off the bench, be a guy who can finish some games and space the floor and can make, 5, 6, 8 threes on any given night.
The word that you used was discretion, which I thought was a good way to put it in terms of maybe his shot selection or just kind of how he feels out the game as it progresses. I think one of the things that was really interesting about his rookie year was in the games where he had a lot of high volume, it was almost like he only played in two situations. It was either he starts and plays a ton because a lot of guys were out, or he doesn't play much at all because there were a bunch of guys returned from injury and that kind of thing. I mean, how much of it, when you use the word discretion, or you talk about just the way that he kind of picks and chooses his spots, is going to be just developing a feel for, I'm guessing that this season coming up, he's going to be in more positions where he's on the court with, the starters. He's not in a situation maybe where he's out there playing 35 minutes a game, but he has to be able to contribute in the 15 to 20 minutes that he plays, for example. I mean, how much of it is that the factor, I guess?
Yeah, no doubt. I think a big part of it is just figuring out a comfortable role for him to settle into. You're exactly right that there was never a point this year where it was just like understood, hey, here are the minutes Jordan's getting, here are the lineups he's playing in, here's how he's going to get his shots. Just think about, over the years how, Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson have kind of developed that chemistry, right? Playing so much together, learning how to play off each other. Jordan hasn't really developed that with anybody yet, just because, like you said, his role was inconsistent, his minutes were inconsistent. And I think the more he kind of settles into who he is and how he's going to play and what his minutes are going to look like, I think it's going to be a lot easier for him to figure out where his shots are coming from, when to be aggressive, how to play off of Zion, those type of things. So I think there's no doubt that he's going to be a consistent member of the rotation next year. The Pelicans are going to probably lose some guys in the offseason. That's going to open up opportunities for Jordan Hawkins. And I think, again, when you have him and Trey Murphy out there shooting, a combined 20-plus threes every game, those guys are going to make a lot of those shots. And this is a team, I think, that we've heard Willie Green say all year, we want to be a team that takes 43s a game. We want to be a team that takes 43s a game. Well, in order to be that team, you got to have the personnel to do that, right? So I think they're kind of pursuing a future where they can have Trey Murphy, Jordan Hawkins out there putting up a whole lot of threes, making a whole lot of threes. So it's kind of similar to those Milwaukee teams that that won a whole lot in the East, where it's Giannis going downhill, scoring a whole bunch of points in the paint, and if you try to wall him off, they're going to spray 3-pointers all over the place. And I think that's what the Pelicans want to be. And I think the more they involve Jordan Hawkins, the closer they can kind of reach that end goal.
It's interesting, guys, because three-pointer is such a huge thing in today's NBA, right? Obviously, and Will, and Jim, you guys are obviously talking about the most important aspect. That's something he can bring. But it's a term you're very familiar with, Will. Hooper. That's how people look at you. When you think of that word, give me some things that you would associate with the word Hooper, and why do people call him that? Because that's what I look at that player too, right? A lot of times I hear, well, his defense. I'm like, all I know is I've seen the guy rebound. He shoots a midi. The guy shoots from the elbow. He'll shoot from the baseline. I've seen floaters. Like, there's a lot more to this guy's game than just shooting the three, which is why I was like, I'd like to see him more. I mean, I think he is a hooper. He's referred to as a hooper. He calls himself a hooper. What is a hooper, Will?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just based on how you move on the court. I think when you look back in history, a lot of the great three-point shooters we think about, a lot of times they can be kind of robotic in the way they move on the court. They could be limited in what they could do off the bounce. And I think Jordan Hawkins is far from that. He's a guy who's very smooth when he's, attacking closeouts. He can get to the mid-range. Like you said, he can get to the floaters, get to the basket. We've seen him throw down some big dunks this year. So this is a guy that, kind of gets, boxed in as a quote-unquote great shooter, or a guy, who's going to be a floor spacer. But I think he's much, much more than that. I've seen this guy work out, in practices and shoot-arounds, and he shoots the midi as comfortable as he does the three-pointer. And I think we're going to see that more and more throughout his career. He's talked about, Kobe Bryant being his favorite player, and you see it in a lot of the stuff he does, the way he's able to get to his spots and rise up and hit shots. And I think he's going to do that more often, and you just see the comfort with the way he moves. I think a lot of times it kind of reminds me of Malik Monk, the way he moves around on the court, where Monk can hit a lot of threes, but also he can get to his spots. He can make plays off a pick and roll. I think that's the kind of guy Hawkins can become as he continues to grow and improve. And you learn how he can view the court and those things. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right. He is a hooper. He's a guy who can make plays off the dribble. He can hit mid-range jumper. He's not just a shooter, which I think adds to his value when you think about how you can use that, around Zion and other guys.
I think there might be some comparisons. It's not a perfect comparison at all, but between him and Trey Murphy, as far as when Trey was a rookie, he definitely took the vast majority of his shots were, spot-up shooting and didn't do as much off the dribble. But I think Jordan came into the NBA with more ability to do stuff off the bounce. I mean, part of it is that he's a guard, and I think Trey is clearly a forward. But so I'm really looking forward to some of the stuff that you talked about, Will, as far as just him being able to do stuff more of attacking the basket. I definitely agree with you too that he's an underrated athlete as well, that he's not one of these guys that's just going to stand there in one spot. I mean, he can do a lot more than that. One of the things that I noticed at the end of the season, or the day after the season ended, when players were asked about him, asked about Jordan Hawkins, including Trey Murphy. It seems like a lot of the guys on the team, just from what they've seen in practices and even what we saw in the games, have a lot of belief in his long-term potential and promise. How do you see? What was your feeling for his teammates as far as what they think about Jordan, as far as long-term what he's going to be capable of?
No, you're definitely right. The guys have a lot of belief in Jordan and what he can be, partially because all the things we've said, his specific type of game fits what this team wants, a high-volume three-point shooter, a guy who can score in transition, a guy who can attack closeouts. But also what they've seen is that this guy's a worker. It's a common theme throughout this team when we talk about Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, all of these guys, they're very committed to being in the gym and improving their game. And I think Jordan Hawkins is right there. That's a guy who really loves basketball. He came from that UConn program. You know how those guys work. Dan Hurley demands a lot of those guys. And Jordan Hawkins is a prime example of a guy who didn't come to college as a big-time recruit. He didn't start his freshman year. He wasn't a guy who was supposed to be in this position, and he kind of worked to get here. He worked to improve his game, to expand the things he can do, and I think you're going to continue to see him put in that work, and I think that's what people are really excited about, his commitment to continue to improve his game and how much he really just cares. I think you see how much Jordan Hawkins really wants to improve, how much he wants to be a great teammate, and I think those are all the values the Pelicans, really, emphasize with their guys. And I think he's going to fit into the culture that this team is building, no doubt.
It'll be interesting to see what happens here. I'm assuming, Will, right? You have him be kind of your guy at Summer League here. Do you see Dyson and him going there as well? Or just maybe Jordan Hawkins kind of maybe taking the lead there?
Maybe. Dyson's still up in the air because he's probably going to play on the Australia team. So I don't know if he wants to do Summer League plus Olympics. But yeah, Jordan Hawkins, no doubt. I would expect to see EJ Liddell there. Maybe a few of those other G League guys. So yeah, it'll be another fun Pelicans team, no doubt.
No doubt. It was interesting last year. The staff wanted Dyson to be more aggressive on the offensive end. I'll be interested to see kind of that same thing with Hawkins too, right? To see not only offensively, did he tell him to be more defensive side? Does he handle the ball more? And maybe is the point or something? I don't know. We'll see.
I guarantee he's going to make up for the way he played last year at Summer League. I've heard him talk about it a few times, and he was not happy about the way he shot that ball in Vegas.
I love that. Will Guillory of The Athletic covers everything, including the very latest on Bronny James and LeBron James. Did you know that? I just added that to your business card.
Yeah, I just submitted my credentials so I can be in the building for all the future G League games. It's going to be a lot of fun next year.
Yeah.
Me and Jim road tripping it around the G League all over the country.
I look forward to the daily ticket updates too for the G League attendance marks.
Listen, man, the guy, that's what I heard. That's going to be one of the reasons somebody's drafts him is because he's going to raise G League ticket sales.
G League ticket sales, baby. That's what we're talking about. Will Guillory is always...
What was the point of him even going to the Combine, right? You just worry about the G League ticket sales.
Well, you know what? You brought up the Combine. Let me ask you, have you ever smudged your height? Because he's been telling everybody he's 6'4". He was 6'1" per the Combine. Have you ever smudged your height?
Listen, I think we all probably, exaggerate a little bit when it comes down to driver's license when they ask you what your height is.
Yeah.
I'm a solid 6'1", something like that.
I'm 5'8" on my driver's license.
See, I thought for sure we would have been like we smudged the weight factor. I guess height would. See, you can't smudge too much because we travel a lot, guys. So I mean, obviously TSA were like, "Sir, you're not 6'2". If me and Eichenhofer go with 6'2", that's not working. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Red fake ID.
Red flag. Yeah.
Yes, this is a fake ID. Will, it's always appreciated, man. Thank you for the time, bud.
All right, man. Always great to talk to y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
Will.
Mr. Will Guillory. Our thanks to Will Guillory for taking a look back at the rookies season. Let's see what happens in year two. I'm with him. I'm excited to see what happens come Summer League and the season to come. Look, it's not my words. It's David Griffin's words. He's the, you might know, he's the vice president of basketball operations.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He said he sees him as a foundational, big piece, big playmaker, a guy they're going to be. So he's telling you they're going to depend on him a lot more in year two. I'm looking forward to seeing how he can contribute in year two. So that puts a wrap on our player profiles. But Jim, you did poo-poo the idea that I wanted to do a broadcaster recap profile where we could break down Graf season, JD season, Aaron's season, the conductor Chris Moran's season. We'll skip mine. There's no need to go back onto mine.
It was perfect.
It was perfect. Yours was perfect here as well. But
amazing.
Upper management said, you know what, we're good. We're good with 11 podcasts. That's all we have in the budget. So we're not going to do that. But you will not leave us empty-handed. You're going to give us, oh, by the way, let's just throw that in there. Antonio Daniels, Joel Myers, Jen Hale joined us. Aaron, and of course Madison, the new mom, which they were excellent too. There's no need to do player recap profiles for them, but they're broadcaster recap. They were
right.
fantastic.
Yeah, no, they were. Everyone had an amazing season. Everyone was a 1 seed. This season. So yeah, there's no reason to go back and
you can
critique
tell
anything.
we're looking at it almost like as a performance review for the other guys. But in all honesty, we do thank everybody that's joined us through the podcast season. From reporters to broadcasters to joining us in their car at the airport. Hurry up. Joe Myers found an office or a room in the hallway at shoot around. I do appreciate everybody joining us for that because you got a different schedule than my schedule, than their schedule. We somehow make it work, and I do appreciate also the team here with the Pelicans, the digital team. They put it up and all of that, and none of this happens, of course, without Doug. So let's give Doug Tatum a little round of applause.
For sure. I mean, there are a million people that helped us produce this season, and
it does sound like it's just us two, but it isn't, I promise.
I love our guest list, too. I mean, we have so many guests that do a great job and are very informative. We closed it out with Will Guillory. Love listening to him talk basketball. So you're right. I mean, there's plenty of people. If anything, there's actually a few people that I wanted to include more when I go back and do my own review of how I did this season. I say, like, maybe we could have had this person on a few more times.
Sure.
So maybe we'll get in the lab this offseason this summer, and we'll come back and be even better next year.
No doubt. But before you go, because look, it's for me. I do a talk show, so I got a pen and a paper. Give me some important dates and something different. It's going to happen this year with the NBA draft. Jim Eichenhofer, give us dates to remember and things to keep an eye on.
Yeah, even though this is the final, quote-unquote, final podcast of this season, I guess you could say. I mean, we're going to be back in some form throughout the summer. The draft is June 26th and 27th, so that's really the next big item that we're looking at. Yeah, for the first time that you mentioned, it's going to be 2 rounds. The first round is on the 26th, which is a Wednesday. The second round is on the 27th, which is a Thursday. And June 30th will be at 6 p.m. Eastern, which I guess I should translate into 5 p.m. Central Time, is going to be the beginning of free agency. July 6th is the end of the moratorium, so teams can begin signing players to that. July 12th to the 22nd is NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Now, the best part about that, Gus, is it's not going to kill our 4th of July holiday the way that it usually does. A lot of times they start Summer League, say July 5th or 6th, and the team has training camp, and there's usually a day where it kind of training camp is almost always in the middle of that week, and it kind of messes things up. So we're going to actually be able to have some fireworks and enjoy ourselves. I'm not sure why the schedule changed for that this year. Maybe because of
the Olympics
might have pushed things back. And I think there might be an Olympic either training camp or event or showcase game right after
USA
Summer League.
Kind of does their thing.
They do all their stuff in Las Vegas. So July 12th to the 22nd, and we're going to have a ton of coverage of that in terms of the specific games and podcasts and stuff like that. So
we have put in a request to go back like we did last year. The problem is you went for the in-season tournament, and apparently your itemized bill was the turned-in receipts.
Even though I was only there for like 2 days, it was just out of control. It was unbelievable.
You took advantage of your time there, apparently, from what I hear.
Yeah, they were like, you spent the entire Las Vegas budget.
It was pages. Pages. I'll just leave it at that. There was an S at the end of page. And what Jim wanted to be reimbursed for. Some very interesting items as well. But, look, so whether or not we go or not, regardless, we're going to have a lot of fun with that here as well. Because I do think one of the things that we talked about with all of our guests here, including Will wrapping it up, it is going to be an interesting offseason. You just take a look at everything. In the time that we record podcasts, we're looking on our computers. It's popping up. I mean, this guy could be traded. This guy's unhappy. Woj, Shams, the two utmost people that really kind of have the know, they both have said, expect this to be a busy offseason of big names, little names, small names. Coach of the Lakers. Are you available to be the Lakers head coach?
No.
Okay, so we can cross that out right now.
Yeah. You know, I'm such a fervent anti-Lakers guy that I feel like even if they offered me that job, I'd be like, I can't, on principle, I
You
just
wouldn't
can't
do
take
it.
this.
See, here's the thing. Can I give you some advice? I'm a
Yes.
friend. Would you consider me a friend?
Sure.
Okay. This is friendly advice.
Okay.
Take it.
Take the money.
You'll get fired after the first week, right? You'll go, because you won't know how to
That's
game
true.
plan. Or you just, it's probably one of the easiest, right? At your press conferences, you take the blame, you take the sword, or if you win,
That's
you
true.
give them the praise. You don't have to coach. LeBron will be doing that for you.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point.
And if you do look absolutely terrible in that first week and get fired, you're guaranteed that money.
I think you're right.
It really
Gus.
is a win-win situation. I mean, it really, honestly, you're going to get way more TV time than you've ever gotten.
That's true. I could get in there and sabotage everything too.
Yeah,
Like
you
I could figure out ways
The Pelicans
to like
own a lot of
backstab
those
people.
Lakers
Yeah.
picks.
People against each other. I could go up to certain players and be like, "Hey, you know, this guy said this about you the other day."
You could.
and
You
just
could.
make it just chaotic.
Just absolutely be, just have the most eventful 7 days ever as an NBA head coach.
I like that. That's a good advice. You're a good friend, Gus.
Well, that's what I'm here for. But as I just gave you that advice as an agent, a little cut. Little cut.
no
would be
problem.
great.
No problem.
Hey, man, this has been fun. Looking forward to continuing doing a lot more stuff. So those are your dates. And, of course, this is your place to get some official info from your New Orleans Pelicans podcast. As always, follow Jim over on X, Jim_Eichenhofer, and we'll catch you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.